Our final talk will be presented by Dr. William Bosl, who serves as a professor at the University of San Francisco, affiliate research faculty member at Boston Children's Hospital, and lecturer at Harvard Medical School. He's also the director and chief scientist with the Mindscope Institute for Neuro-AI. Dr. Bosl's research is focused on developing computational signatures of disease risk from EEG dynamics and clinical data. This research uses biomedical informatics and AI methods to map psychological measures to behavioral symptoms for modeling trajectories of psychiatric health and disease risk. He is now exploring the application of these methods to neurophenomenological assessments with the goal of creating a framework for research to study correlations between cognition and conscious experiences. Dr. Bosl's presentation is titled Clinical AI and Beyond, Autonomy, Ethics, and the Role of Consciousness, a dialogue between science, philosophy, and faith on the future of intelligent systems. Please join me in welcoming Dr. William Bosl.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you to the organizers of this conference for inviting me here to discuss this important topic. I know I'm the last speaker in a long afternoon, so I'll try to make this a little bit interesting and lively, and maybe even finish a bit early. This title slide actually is a summary of my whole talk. I'll talk through it, but we could probably just finish here and be done. So first, a quick overview of the evolution of artificial intelligence. It's actually not all that new. The term was introduced about 70 years ago at a summer conference at Dartmouth University, where the term artificial intelligence was first used, and was used to describe the effort to simulate human intelligence. Intelligence wasn't carefully defined at the time, so it was sort of a loose goal. AI research came and went in waves, interest grew and fell, until more recently it became more in the public eye because of some innovations that qualitatively changed what was possible. The first big innovation came in 2011 with a invention, I guess, at the University of Toronto, for which a person was awarded a Nobel Prize in physics just a few years ago, which was remarkable in itself. It enabled massive amounts of data to be processed by something called artificial neural networks in a new way that reintroduced this approach to computing and made large language models possible. Then another innovation at Google in 2017 introduced a new algorithm which accelerated that increasingly, leading to the introduction of ChatGPT in 2022, which exploded into the public eye. Interestingly, I just read, and it's not even on this slide, the former director of artificial intelligence research at Meta, or Facebook, Yann LeCun, recently said that the current generation of large language models has about a 5-year lifespan, and it'll hit a wall and basically not be able to be trained further because it will have soaked up all the information of the world. He has left Meta to start a new company to create what he calls embodied intelligence. So this idea that we'll take AI capabilities and put it into robotic bodies so they can learn from the environment as humans do. Well, I was going to talk about some moral hazards in medicine and beyond. I've listed some of them briefly in the kinds of things that we talk about when we're talking about the concerns of AI in society. Such things as the loss of human oversight, and we've heard a lot of these already today in some of the previous talks, so I won't dwell on these. but the opacity of the systems, why are they making decisions they do? That's really important in medical applications. Bias and inequity, we've seen that in systems already. If they're trained on data that is biased in one way, they'll make decisions that amplify that bias. There's an erosion of trust, the potential of de-skilling of not only clinicians, but any human skill that is relying upon AI. All these things are, they're important problems, but maybe not the most important problems. There are also dangers from commercial incentives that will drive the development and use of AI systems in ways that may not be so desirable from a human perspective, and we just heard a lot about the economic implications of AI. We hear concerns about the coming leap to superintelligence. It's not really clearly defined, but some quotes by leaders are really a bit eye-opening, and they point to what I'm going to say is the hard problem of AI. All these other problems that I just listed are important, but they're tractable. They're things we can work with. But there is a hard problem, and I'll say it right now, that is, can AI systems become conscious? Or another way of saying that is, if the answer is no, why not? What's different about humans? And this has really important implications for society, as well as our faith and our ability to understand and explain to others why human dignity must be preserved. So listen to these quotes. This is important. We will hit artificial general intelligence, AGI, which often is used as a synonym for human-level intelligence, sooner than most people think. And then there is a long continuation from what we call AGI to what we call superintelligence, which he suggests will occur in 5 to 8 years after that. Elon Musk, I think we're trending toward having something that's smarter than the smartest human. There's a level beyond that which is smarter than all humans combined, which frankly will happen around 2029 or 2030. Again, a sort of 5-year window. And Ray Kurzweil, who's been saying this is coming for the last 20 years or more, artificial intelligence will reach human levels by around 2029. Follow that out further to say 2045, we will have multiplied the intelligence of our civilization a billionfold. Well, first of all, intelligence isn't clearly defined. If you define intelligence, for example, as how fast you can do arithmetic and compute numbers, computers are already billions of times faster than us. And that hasn't ended the world. I think there's a deeper issue behind this. We heard this term before called transhumanism. I call it a religion for the AI age. Maybe this dates me a little bit. Resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. If you know Star Trek, the Borg collective was essentially what the transhumanists have in mind. So this comes from the Transhumanist Declaration. It was written, at least in part, and driven by Nick Bostrom, who's a philosopher at Oxford. Artificial intelligence will not only surpass human cognitive abilities, but will fundamentally transform the nature of consciousness and existence. The part I put in red is the religious belief that drives many, as we heard, who are creating the AI systems that we see today. Machine consciousness will emerge as a superior form of intelligence, capable of self-reflection, creativity, and moral reasoning beyond human limits. Again, they've taken intelligence, just cognitive ability, and transformed that into something much more, including moral reasoning. This evolution is viewed as inevitable and desirable, accelerating humanity toward a post-biological future where mind and machine converge. So, as I said, the hard problem. The challenges I listed previously are important but tractable. well, the hard problem of AI is related to the hard problem of consciousness. And I want to spend the rest of my time talking about consciousness. I think, remarkably, Pope Leo is very insightful with all the problems we have in the world to see AI, and in particular, the threat of AI to human dignity, as one of the preeminent challenges in our society today. I'll go on to say later, it's not that AI will replace human dignity, but that people believe it will. And as I read from the Humanist Declaration recently, Transhumanist Declaration, there are many who believe that. So we must never forget the ontological dignity that belongs to the person as such, simply because he or she exists and is willed, created, and loved by God. We all believe this because we have a source of knowledge that's beyond science, church doctrine, the Bible, spiritual resources that transcend science. But the world needs to hear scientific language as well. And so I'm very interested in listening to and understanding the emerging field of consciousness, the science of consciousness. What are they concerned with? So, David Chalmers, a philosopher of mind and consciousness, 30 years ago at a conference, he used the phrase, the hard problem of consciousness, and it stuck. Specifically, the hard problem of consciousness refers to the challenge of explaining why and how we have subjective experiences or qualia. Or why and how do subjective experiences arise from physical processes? This problem contrasts with the easy problems of consciousness, which involve explaining the neural mechanisms behind cognitive functions like perception, memory, and behavior. So the hard problem is essentially, what is different about humans? And David, he is not a Christian. I believe he claims to be agnostic, but he's honest enough to say there is something there that allows us to have these human experiences of this is me, and it's connected with many other things, I believe, moral awareness and so on, but we'll use the single word consciousness to sort of summarize that which is more than just cognitive or intellectual ability. I think it's remarkable that scientists like David can see this, and to say that to account for consciousness, you need some extra ingredient in the explanation. He's aware there's something missing in the materialist description of reality, and it's not enough. Thomas Nagel similarly says in a book published in about 2015, so not long ago, 10 years ago, he is an atheist, and yet he says the materialist view of the world is wrong. We should expect theoretical progress in this area, in consciousness research, human consciousness, to require a major conceptual revolution, at least as radical as relativity theory, the introduction of electromagnetic fields into physics. Perhaps the basis for this identity pervades the world. It's remarkable that they're using these words and not even realizing how this supports our view of the world. So what is this extra ingredient, this unknown variable that serves as the explanatory bridge between the material brain and this awareness of myself, of each of you? Let's call it Q. This comes, there's an anecdote. I think I have a minute to share this. When Albert Einstein was about 4 years old, his father gave him a compass. And he was fascinated by this, that the needle could always point to the north, no matter which way you turn this. And it was explained to him there's this geomagnetic field, and that influences the needle. And he thought, this is remarkable. How do we understand this invisible thing that we can't see? And anecdotally, his uncle told him that there are many things we don't understand, but just call it X and keep searching for X. And so if I meet David Chalmers at a conference next year, I'm going to tell him, David, if you don't like spiritual words, just call it Q, and we'll keep searching for Q. So what is this Q? And here's my anecdote. It'll be in the slides if you want to review it later. I got some great insights from a book that's not very well known called A Study of Hebrew Thought by a French Catholic philosopher, Claude Tresmontant, who wrote in the 1960s or so. And so what I'm going to describe is not mine uniquely, but I think it fits the need for this explanatory gap, the Q that's missing, and it also lays out a clear Christian anthropology that I think might be appealing to the secular community as well. So in opposition to Platonic dualism of mind and body, which seems to pervade our culture remarkably, this idea that there's a separable soul that can fly away at some point, this is not a biblical idea, but the Hebrew and biblical tradition introduces an entirely new ontology. In Hebrew, it was called the Ruah. That was later evolved into the pneuma or nous in Greek. We call it the spirit in English. I think nous is a good word because it's from the same root as noema or experience. It kind of fits the phenomenological experience that Chalmers talked about that we're aware of as humans. The spirit or nous is associated with a spiritual intelligence, and we heard some of this discussed today, this awareness that there's something beyond us. It's kind of interesting, in every human civilization that's existed on Earth, there's been an awareness of the divine. Some of the details differ, but that doesn't happen, as far as we know, in any animal community or any other community. It's humans alone who have this awareness of a divine. It's distinct from just rational computation, something that we share with animals. Animals have a brain and a body like we do, and calculate and make decisions in the world, but they lack this awareness of the divine and awareness of themselves, which is also connected to moral agency and moral decision-making. So I want to kind of beat this in because this is the main point of this whole talk. We are a body, or soma. We kind of like Greek words, maybe they sound more scientific. A mind, psyche, that calculates and thinks and probably also connected with emotional reactions. And a nous, or spirit. This is the conscious dimension, and I like to think of this as another dimension of being outside of the three-dimensional physical universe. And this is where it sort of connects with what Thomas Nagel was saying. Maybe we need a new, broader conception of reality that goes beyond the physical world. So I've drawn a third orthogonal axis. It's orthogonal to the physical mental universe, and it connects to some sort of consciousness field that pervades everything. This isn't pantheism, but this is us as individuals who have this ability to sense what we would call pervading grace, or the Eastern Orthodox have a term, the uncreated energies of God, which maybe is appropriate. So this nous is Chalmers' missing ingredient. The fundamental property, it's human property, every person has it. So while AI may simulate intelligent behavior, it will never have this third dimension, this property that's something more than physics. And it can't cross over into that dimension which only humans have. Just briefly, this idea of uncreated energies, maybe it appeals to me because it's sort of physics-like. I read about it in, interestingly, a book by a Jesuit Catholic, George Maloney, who wrote about the theology of the uncreated energies of God. So this idea is that the uncreated energies, which I think is more or less equivalent to sanctifying grace, refers to God's active presence in the world as a direct force through which humans experience divinity. We experience it because we have the property that allows us to. It's sort of like there are some birds who can navigate by sensing the Earth's geomagnetic field. Well, what do they see? Do they see the field lines? Do they hear something? Do they smell the line? We don't know because we don't have that property. Similarly, only humans have this property of sensing the divine. And I suspect this dimension that we have, just as our bodies grow and develop, get stronger, more coordinated, and so on, our minds can develop, sometimes independently of the body. A severely mentally disabled child, its body can grow, but she or he may remain in infancy for the lifespan, so they can grow independently. Similarly, maybe the spirit or the nous grows and develops. I suspect saints, because they exercise their spirit just as we might exercise our body, it becomes more sensitive. It's able to sense this divine field much better than we are. So, could consciousness interact with the uncreated energies in a manner akin to quantum coherence? I'm going to ignore some of that, but this is what I want to talk about with the secular world, because they talk in terms of quantum fields and so on, and find that interesting. One important point, and before I talk about mind interacting with it, what's really interesting, and Tresmontent points this out from biblical sources, that it's very clear that body and mind, soma and psyche, die. And we all know that, people die. But clearly, in the scriptures, spirit never dies. So if we're this unified, three-dimensional being, what happens at death? Well, our sensory interaction with this physical universe becomes inoperative for a while, but the conscious, nous, spirit, whatever we want to call it, that awareness doesn't change. It doesn't die. It doesn't go anywhere. It's in another dimension already. So right now, everyone here is in that other dimension. We're not really too sensitive to it. Maybe there's a few of you who are saints out here who are. I'm not so well developed there. This is remarkable. One key challenge, and this is maybe a bit in the secular world, but it's also of interest to AI. How does consciousness, or our nous, this spiritual sense, this other dimension, how does it interact with a cognitive mind? It does in some ways. Spirit influences our thinking, our mind. It's probably partly what's behind the scripture. Be transformed by the renewing of your spiritual mind. We transform our thinking by transforming our spirit first. Chalmers, again, says, in general, any information that's consciously experienced will also be cognitively represented, but not all properties of experience are structural properties. So what is this relationship between those? That's a question for us to help answer, because people in the secular world are asking this. And what's kind of related to this, and I'll get back to AI in a moment, if we can show that we have this interaction, and a machine, no matter how complex, there's never anything more than calculation going on, that's kind of not a proof, but it's evidence for us of the uniqueness of humans, the unique property and ability we have to sense or communicate with God, the divine, that a machine will never have. So why does all this matter? This deep study of consciousness and philosophy of mind, it's because, first of all, human dignity is diminished by false AI claims. That's why I called this transhumanist declaration a religion. And it's a false religion that will deceive many people because they hear this, and this AI system that will merge with humanity, that becomes God. It is our salvation because it will solve our problems, and it gives us eternal life because we'll upload our minds to the cloud and live forever. It's false, but some will believe it. And there are practical implications for law and society, and in particular, a proper understanding of human ontology informs the guide rails that we should implement to control what we do with AI systems and what we don't do. And in particular, turning over moral authority to AI systems. So finally, just some applications. This idea of consciousness and moral decision-making, we don't have time to go into detail, but moral agency, the ability to make truly moral decisions, which as we know, have to be informed by our knowledge of God and his laws of love for the universe, that requires this conscious nous or spirit to function properly. So I started out by saying the purpose of my talk was to answer the question, will AI systems become conscious? And I believe and think I can argue that's definitively no, because they don't have this additional dimension, the nous or spirit. No matter how complex they become in their computations, as Chalmers even said, we can't get consciousness from complexity. There's something missing. And that spirit will always be missing, no matter how complex the machine becomes. As I said, it's essential to moral agency, and the decisions we make about how much moral agency to give to the machines depends on this ontology. Okay, I'm going to try to wind up. It's getting late, but a few implications for AI governance flow from this ontology of the human person, what makes us unique. And there's a lot of work to be done here, I think, by Christian scientists and philosophers to develop these ideas further. The world needs to hear it. And many people want to hear it. They may not know they want to hear it, but they're looking for answers. And if the only answers they hear are the materialist, transhumanist perspective, that's what they'll believe. Prevailing guidance, a few points here. Prevailing guidance now assumes human controllable instruments, but as the systems become more autonomous, there's a temptation to give control, autonomous control to systems, because their computational ability, I hesitate to use intelligence, but super intelligence, their ability to compute things will far exceed ours. So imagine you train your AI system to control your military defense system, because it can play chess way faster than a human. It can do military operations way faster than humans. But without any moral agency, that system, which is optimized in the United States to prefer US interests, and in China, Chinese interests, and in Russia, Russian interests, and none of those are Catholic interests, probably. Those systems may decide the best way to preserve our interests is to nuke everybody else right away. This is not so far-fetched. Do we really want to turn over moral authority to these systems, no matter how complex? Obviously, the answer is no. And finally, just kind of interesting, I also work in psychiatry, and a really interesting question is, are there disorders that are not just physical, not just mental, but spiritual that appear as mental disorders or are currently maybe defined as mental disorders, that affects our therapy. Just giving someone a pill for depression, it can help if there's a chemical imbalance, but it's not going to help if this interaction between cognition and spirit is somehow causing the problem. Then our psychiatric care needs to be informed by this broader view of a human ontology. And so here's a challenge for physicians as well, to take this understanding of the whole human person and determine better therapies. And so what does all this mean? Call to action. I personally feel that we are obligated as Christian scientists and philosophers and scholars to engage with the world. And I think we heard this before in the business world, economic world. We need to be engaged at the highest levels to influence the direction of development. I'm particularly interested in these scientific issues, and that's just one part of it. I think it's important that we adopt non-consciousness as a default. That is, machines cannot become conscious, and therefore we must always have humans in the loop, in control. I don't know how we enforce this. We have to run for office, become politicians, because they're the ones who put guardrails around industry. We heard some discussion this morning about industry self-regulating through market forces. Perhaps we need to be involved in that as well. And that's all. Thank you.